Every now and again, it feels like an anime comes around that has potential to become a classic. Shows like Neon Genesis Evangelion, Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball, Clanad, and K-On! Have stood the test of time and continue to soar in the top of pop culture and be on nearly every single must-watch list for any anime enthusiast or even an average watcher. Lately, it almost feels like these shows have been few and far between. I don't know if the shows are just not up to par or I'm just a picky asshole, but throughout the years, it seems that the older animes still hold the spotlight. With the exception of newer shows like Boku no Hero Academia, Demon Slayer, and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the list still seems to be growing, but at a very slow rate as to what it used to be. Now, this should go without saying that every anime doesn't need to be perfect. There are countless upon countless shows that I have watched recently that were, to me, absolutely amazing. Girls Last Tour, Gate, Railgun, Vivi, hell, even Akebi's sailor uniform is still blowing me away, which is airing this season actually. But I still get the feeling that there's shows that don't reach the top, like those predecessors before it. That was until I watched this show, ODDTAXI. ODDTAXI follows the seemingly mundane life of a walrus taxi driver, Hiroshi Odokawa. We see the asocial walrus in his conversations with his passengers as the days go by. His seemingly boring life suddenly takes a 180 when his dashcam footage of his taxi becomes potential evidence for a missing persons case. The police, along with the Yakuza and a few other well-known criminals, set their sights on Odokawa and become rather adamant on getting their hands on the dashcam footage. Spoiler alert! I'm about to go pretty deep into the plot of this show, so if you haven't watched this show, pause the video and go finish ODDTAXI right now, because I'm gonna spoil it for you, and I don't need any keyboard warriors in the comments saying you spoiled the show for me. How could you do this? Odokawa shouldn't have blah blah blah. I don't need to hear any of it. This is your first warning. I'll put more throughout the video just in case that one didn't click. With that out of the way, let's get into ODDTAXI. Right off the bat, you notice it. No cute anime girls, none late for school with bread hanging out of their mouth, no MC telling you his past or his dreams of the future, just a walrus in his taxi, tea knocked over beside him, and ready to continue transporting passengers as per any other night. ODDTAXI offers us a refresher. It was nice to see a show that didn't have humans or cute anime girls in it. Not that those are bad things. I love cute anime, moe, as much as the next person, but it was nice to see a show that didn't do this. It kept my attention without the visuals of cute girls doing cute things. Instead, we're looking at a wide array of animals, both big and small, each one fitting to their personality like a sheath to its blade. The walrus is asocial and awkward, the monkey is naive and gets himself into trouble, and the polar bear is a towering predator that strikes fear into anyone who sees him. The character design of this show is just one of the many things that makes it so enjoyable and interesting. Every episode left me on the edge of my seat and wanting more. I could not put this show down. What was going to happen next? Does Odokawa think things will really play out in his favor? We don't know. ODDTAXI was exceptional at leaving us on the edge of our seats. Each ending of the episode played so well into making the viewer just itch to find out what happens next. It's one of those shows that you almost can't put down. For example, at the end of episode 2, the comic duo, the Homo sapiens, are in the back of the taxi, arguing. Our horse friend receives a phone call about a gig he's been offered from his manager, which leads to our boar friend feeling a little bit sad and upset at the situation. This in itself ties into the show, but we'll get into that spider web in just a bit. They exit and almost immediately the infamous crime-hardened baboon, Dobu, who we learn about earlier in the show, enters the taxi. With a gun pointed to Odokawa's head, the end of the episode cuts, and we are left wondering what exactly happens next. You are fed this information, and you can't just sit there and go to bed or be like, oh, I'm gonna go pick up and do something else. You have to find out what happens next because the cliffhangers in the show are just that good. This occurs at the end of nearly every episode, and it's just another thing that makes ODDTAXI slowly climb the ranks to that peak of the mountain that's gonna sit with the top of the animes. But let's get into that spiderweb we mentioned earlier. Throughout ODDTAXI, we are introduced to new characters. Idols with a not-so-perky personality, a sussy baka alpaca who steals medicine, and a meerkat twin who's lost his sense of justice. Each and every character plays not just a minor, but a major role in the gigantic spiderweb of ODDTAXI. As you finish each episode, you come to find out just a bit more about these characters and how they play their part in the grand scheme of things. Now, this might seem confusing having to follow all these different subplots of the characters on top of following Odokawa, but it's not. Take it from me as someone who needs to read the same thing multiple times just to comprehend it. ODDTAXI introduces characters and how they play into the story in such a way that even a simpleton like me can understand. They do it by feeding us little bits and pieces of information. We get a snippet of the character throughout each episode that introduces something small but easily digestible. Take episode 3 for example. Odokawa is sent in a rush to meet with Shirakawa at the park. On his way, his taxi nearly collides with an innocent bystander. Normally, this would just be used to reinforce the watcher that Odokawa sees this meeting as urgent and is less cautious about his surroundings. But that's not really the case. While that is true, it also introduces a brand new subplot to the show. One that impacts our story in some pretty major ways. And if that was hard to understand, don't worry. ODDTAXI delivers just why this fatal encounter was such a big part of the plot in the very next episode. So if you missed it, you're gonna hop on the train right after that. Another interesting subplot that ties so well into the show as a whole was with our friend Kakihana, a lonely and desperate white gibbon who just wanted to find love, but got more than he bargained for. In the beginning, we see Kakihana as just a friend and a drinking buddy to Odokawa, but as ODDTAXI would have it, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. Kakihana falls head over heels for Ichimura, the calico cat. It's pretty obvious to us as the viewer that our poor man Kakihana is being roped into some good old catfishing, but we come to find out what's really going on with our little catfishing calico cat. Ichimura is actually an idol for the group Mystery Kiss and is being forced into badger games by her manager to pay back a debt for the Yakuza. All these little nuances you see early in the show play such a major role later down the line. And I couldn't help but be mind blown when you come to find out just how well this ties into the story as a whole. With the little subplots out of the way and all the little hoo-lahs there, let's get into the real meat and potatoes of this video and the show overall. Odokawa. Alright, so this is where the real spoilers come in. So if you haven't heeded my first warning, this is your last and final warning. If you haven't seen the show, go watch it, because it's totally worth it. And then when you finish the show, come back to this video, and if you have any questions, I'm sure they'll be answered here. Odokawa, as we mentioned before, was an asocial, sharp-tongued, and shy walrus. But he always carries this aura of mystery to him, and it's a heavy aura. From the get-go, he seems normal, a low-key depressed fella, like all of us, who drives a taxi for a living. Not all of us, but some of us. But the image ends just as quickly as it begins. People find Odokawa a bit odd. He has been reported to talk at home. This wouldn't be odd except for the fact that he lives alone, and always has. So once his taxi footage shows evidence of the missing person, Odokawa is almost instantly put on a suspect list. As the show continues, we as the viewer almost agree with the accusations. He gets nervous when people accuse him, he sweats and gets a bit tense. There are even scenes of him talking to someone or something in his closet when he's home alone. Odokawa also has a severe phobia of water. On multiple occasions, we see flashbacks of Bubbles and Odokawa waking up in a panic of sweats and heavy breathing. Why does he do this? He's a walrus. Walruses are literally born by the water and thrive by the water. Odokawa should not have a fear of the thing that almost gives him life. He is so mysterious, in fact, that his doctor and friend, Goriki, finds his behavior a bit odd. It isn't until later in the show that Goriki takes matters into his own hands and finally uncovers the truth behind what's actually behind Odokawa. This is where things get quite crazy, so buckle your seatbelts. Goriki is determined to find out about Odokawa and his past. Since all he knows is that his parents abandoned him when he was young, Goriki first tries the landlord. She gives him some clues, what happened to his actual parents, where he went to school, etc. He decides to venture to Odokawa's hometown and school. This is where things take a very, very dark turn. During a conversation with Odokawa's former physical therapist and doctor, Goriki discovers a memory notebook that Odokawa had kept during his time at the hospital. It turns out Odokawa was a lot more interesting than we were first led to believe. And as to why, well, it is a string of extremely unfortunate events that no child nor person should ever have to experience in their whole life. Odokawa was bullied during school. This left him with a resentment and dislike towards people. His school life was misery, but his home life was even leagues worse. His father was not so secretly cheating on his wife with a mistress. Odokawa's mother knew about this and took her rage out on her own son. The only time he felt real happiness was during his car rides that he would go on with his father. He would leave him all alone in the zoo, and it was there that Odokawa developed his love for animals. They were peaceful. They never said terrible things to him. They never hit him. His mind was finally at ease when he would watch them. His pain went away while staring into the eyes of these animals. They were his comfort. On one very unfortunate night, Odokawa was told that they were going for a car ride. His mother and father were both there, which I'm sure seemed odd to him, but it was nice to have the whole family around for once. He's staring out the window, watching the night lights zoom past him. When it happens, the car plunges into the water. Both his mom and dad die in the crash, but Odokawa miraculously survives. He spends time in the hospital, writing in his memory notebook, and is eventually given a new caretaker, and is taken to start a new life in Tokyo, all by himself. This is why ODDTAXI is the way it is. This is why everyone we see are animals. We are looking at everything through the perspective of a trauma-ridden human being, not a walrus. After his accident, Odokawa developed a mental illness called visual agnosia. Visual agnosia is caused by the total or partial loss of the ability to recognize and identify familiar objects and or people by sight. Everyone is an animal because Odokawa found comfort in animals as a child. They were the only thing that took his mind away from the horrors that were going on at home and at school. Everything from this moment seems to fall into place. Why does he drive a taxi? Because as a child, one of his only joys were car rides. Why is he deathly afraid of water? Because his parents plunged their car into the water in a double suicide attempt. At the climax of the show, Odokawa is being chased by Yano and Sekiguchi. With nowhere to turn, his taxi flies off the edge of the highway, money trailing behind it in a blaze of slow-mo glory. A breathtaking and absolutely amazing scene with the end of our story only mere feet below us. The water. Odokawa is facing death in the eyes for the second time. As his car plummets towards the water, he's forced to relive the exact day he did as a child that would change his life forever. But our walrus hero beats the odds again and survives. Waking up in a hospital bed to those around him, only they're human beings now. Odokawa braved his fears and beats his mental illness. He can see others as humans again. He no longer has to be afraid of those around him. Odokawa has come full circle into a new, revitalizing life. And I can't help but feel happiness for our pal, Mr. Odokawa, as we've been through his side for those 13 riveting episodes. As Odokawa managed to go full circle, so do we in this video. With an amazing story, the riveting subplot, and astounding twist at the end, I still can't help but feel in awe of this show. It pulls you into 13 episodes and it does not let go. Whether ODDTAXI will go down as one of the great animes is still hard to tell. But maybe it's not the popularity of the anime that makes it so great, it's what you take away from it. So there it was, ODDTAXI and why you need to watch ODDTAXI. Not you should, but you need to. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was our first time doing more of a commentary video over an anime. If you guys did like it, make sure to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. And if you did watch ODDTAXI, leave a comment on what you thought about it. Who was your favorite character? What was your favorite part? Let me know in the comments. I'd actually be really thrilled to find out what you guys thought of the show. Without further ado, if you guys liked the video, go ahead and subscribe again, and we'll catch you on the next one. If you guys like the shirt I was wearing in the video, go head on over to mikonclothing.com to pick up your very own. Once you get to checkout, use code FIRST10 for 10% off your entire order at mikonclothing.com.